But at that point, and we charge for the report, we charge $19.50 for the report. All of the NHD companies got their reports from LexisNexis. That's the name of the company. Well, LexisNexis decided, well, why are the NHD companies making money on these reports? We're gonna start giving the reports out. What's ironic is the fact that they don't charge for the report. The sellers are entitled to one free report per year. So I always recommend, if you've got a home of your own, contact LexisNexis either by phone or website, get a free report. Because on these reports, just like credit reports, sometimes there might be items that were disclosed incorrectly or put on your report that don't even involve you. So every seller is entitled to one report per year. It's the seller's responsibility to order, not the agent. So keep that in mind. But like I said, if you've got someone that's only been there a couple of years, have that seller get a report, then you can see what happened prior to them moving in. So, and it's not mandatory, but it is, again, valuable information, just like the environmental report. One of the other forms that I gave you, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's the tax estimator. I know that you have one of them. Keep going. There it is, here, property tax estimator. Another reason to order a report is because if you have an electronic version of our report, you can go to the, scroll down the property tax section, which is usually page 30, 31, 32. By doing so, there's a link. Go to that link, and it's our property tax estimator. If you've got a buyer that wants to know what property tax is going to be for the upcoming year, all you have to do is, once you get to the link, fill in the closing date, tentative closing price. Within seconds, you can provide that buyer with property tax and supplemental tax information as opposed to just kind of estimating it. Within seconds, you can give them that information. So it's a valuable tool. It makes you look better. It gives them more information. So that's our property tax estimator, but you can only do it if you have our report electronically. If you don't, you can conceivably go to the website, but in doing that, you have to enter more information besides just the closing date and the sale price. You got to enter it says a parcel number and a couple of other things. So another good reason to order the report up front. I think I covered just about everything. Do you have any questions about anything?
What was the...
On one of the deals I was doing, Dave, in Woodland Hills, in fact, we're in escrow on it right now, it came up that it may be in a Melrose place. And it's been my understanding, and it may be a misunderstanding by people, that there is no Melrose in the valley anymore. And I've never run across anybody who's paid any Melrose or anything like that, but it referred to it could be in a Melrose area. And of course, my client came up with all kinds of concerns and then misread some of the other paperwork and thought, look at all these charges that were like $18,000 in charges. And I think that was showing what's being assessed against your property taxes and stuff. But it's very, very confusing to people because we're giving them this information, but they don't have a clue how to interpret it. And that's why, and then when I called about the Melrose, I couldn't really get a clear-cut answer. Stuart and I more or less came up with the idea that, well, evidently they're just telling you that the city could assess Melrose if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Which, what they could do if they wanted to is confusing to people. And it's the same thing I run into with preliminary title reports. There's really nothing on a preliminary title report that a buyer needs to know about unless there's a problem, and then the title company will tell them.
Right.
Yet we issue a preliminary title report, and then they see things on there that don't apply, and you go through this whole process with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a way around it, but it's just that's why I wanted to have this meeting today. Is that I was going through that. That was the first time I've seen that detailed of the report.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I go, man, there's a lot of stuff on here.
I remember we talked about this a month or so ago, and that's why it's important. If there are any questions on anything, call my customer service. That's so important.
What is Melrose?
That is an assessment like out in the Santa Clarita Valley. They're building all these neighborhoods. They're putting in the roads. They haven't built the schools and stuff yet. So they've only assessed people for the road improvements and stuff they've done so far. then they assess another charge, they call it Mello-Roos, and I suppose that's somebody's name, that they charge for the schools and stuff like that, and that's an additional assessment that's put on over your
Is
property
it just
taxes.
schools or is it the other
It-
infrastructure,
all
like
in-
parks
Any
and
kind
then,
of
yeah?
infrastructure
Yeah.
that they decide on. And that's why I think like in the valley, if they decide, well, gee, we have to put in a new school somewhere, that they have the ability to
To assess them.
assess it, yeah. But I had never seen that before anywhere, and that's,
Yeah,
I
something
didn't know
like you
that they
said.
could add it. I thought you had to vote.
it's gotta
for
be
them.
voted in on by 2/3 of majority. But the thing is that that's what I say, when I read through it, I'm looking at that and going, well, I think that's just a warning that it could happen, but it does, all the disclosure we do today does more to confuse people, I think, sometimes.
scare 'em,
than to-
yeah.
It does. There's another law that was passed a year ago, and I don't have that flyer. Some of the information that I distribute, it's known as this Disclosure Watch, and that's what this came from also. It's a publication that is written by our lead attorney, and it comes out on a monthly basis, and I'll try to keep you guys informed. I've got actually a training guide that has at least 8 or 9 articles. One of the articles that came out a few months ago, and when I give you the notebook, you'll have it, talked about the state of California, that even though you might own the mineral and water rights to a property, the state can assess that further. And it was a law that was passed a year or so ago. I want to just briefly talk about the report itself. And the first page is basically the signature page, and we only have one signature page, so all signatures are required.
You
whether
have
or
an
not they're
extra
all there.
report?
I might have, I
No?
think I gave you one, but I'll give you this one.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I've got it, yeah, I do have an extra.
You have it.
What I always recommend is go to the summary of results. And if a property is not in an area, hazardous zone, just skip over it. If it is, then read it. With flood zones, there are about 15, 20 different zoning labels, from A through M or A whatever, Z, that'll dictate what insurance might be required on a particular property. I think the NHD report is as important, if not more so, than the preliminary title report, because it basically gives any prospective buyer information on fire, flood, earthquake, and if they're in a high fire, flood, earthquake zone, that's gonna dictate how much insurance they're gonna have to pay.
Can I just interject something
Yeah,
here? Just to be aware of something, that a lot of people get, oh, it's in a flood zone, they're really afraid right away. Give you an example of something years ago when NHD first came out. I was selling a piece of property in Agora, and it was in a flood zone. So the people go, and I'm looking at this, and we're sitting on top of a hill.
Oh,
What could flood here? Well, the reason it was in a flood zone is because there was a basin, like below the property, kind of a place like this. And if a certain amount of rain could fill up, it could possibly fill that basin and then spill over into the properties down below. So it was essentially a flood zone, but the property that, it wasn't a flood zone because of the geographical area, but there was nothing could happen to this property. I mean, it's sitting at the top of a hill, it's not gonna, all the water's gonna run away from it. But because it was the feeder essentially, or within the area where the flood waters could come from, it was included in the flood zone even though it wouldn't affect the house in any way, so.
wow. You look at these reports and you can see that the determination, some of them are within a quarter of a mile, airport vicinity, that's within 2 miles. Again, there are different boundaries that we disclose. Some of the other NHD companies provide what we call advisories, which means that they're not determining whether or not property is in or not in a hazardous zone. Advisories basically are just referring the potential buyer to a website. We don't have advisories like that. Also, what was I gonna say about, not just advisories, something else. Oh, I know, radon gas, you'll see that in every single report. 99.9% of the time, it's not hazardous, but it exists everywhere. Just like faults exist everywhere. So, it's nothing to be alarmed about. Again, if you have questions, write them down, but we will definitely give you a firm commitment it is in or not in a hazardous zone. You can go through this later, I don't want to go through it all, but you can see that, you know, if you go to the flood hazard zones and all there, and earthquake, all the information's there. I'll give you an example. There's something called material facts. A material fact is anything that determines the price or desirability of a home. And I'll give you an example. If you've got a house up on a hill here, and you've got another house down below, it's in a liquefaction zone, and the buyer is looking to buy the house down below. If they do their due diligence, and they got a report from us that says it's in a liquefaction zone, and they plan on putting a pool in the future, if they do their due diligence, they'll go to the Department of Building and Safety, and they'll find out, hey, I'm in a liquefaction zone, want to build a pool, what do I need? Department of Building and Safety is going to tell them you have to have a retaining wall. Well, if they go a step further and they find out about the retaining wall, how much it might cost, in this case, this is a true case, they went and found out that a retaining wall would cost them $250,000. If they wanted to put a pool in, then they can buy the property and they don't have to put a pool in, or they put the pool in and they're going to have that additional expense. That's a material fact. And if we didn't include that liquefaction disclosure in our report, and later on they wanted to put a pool in, well, if they'd known it ahead of time, that would affect the price or desirability. So it's important to read the report, to know what's involved. I'll give you another example. If you've got a house in a more rural area, and the house happens to be in an environmentally protected species and plant zone, if that prospective buyer is planning on building onto the house, they can't do it legally if it's protected, if it's in one of those environmental zones. So again, material fact affects the desirability or price of the home. So it's all important information. Don't let the report, like I said, the thickness of it overwhelm you. And again, if you have questions, call. Keep in mind that you're a named insured, covered under RE&O insurance. I try to get the word out and tell people as much as possible. Any report that doesn't have the accuracy we do, any items that are not disclosed, puts them at risk. So
I don't think people realize you're not regulated.
they probably don't.
You know, because they figure, well, I can get this for 115, or I can go get this one for 60.
Oh, yeah.
Pay that.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that you're really getting what you pay.
And I know you and Stuart have always promoted property ID, and you know the differences. Other companies will say, you know, we're the most complete. Well, then let's compare. Let's see. And we put it in writing, the fact that anything that is reported or disclosed incorrectly or not disclosed at all, we'll take full responsibility. So.
You know, you and